When a struggling single father saved a billionaire's life on a busy street corner, neither of them knew it would shatter everything they thought they knew about love, family, and second chances. What happened next changed both their worlds forever. Welcome to a story that will take you on an emotional journey through the streets of New York City, where fate brings together two souls from completely different worlds. Stay with me until the very end of this incredible tale, and please comment with your city name so I can see how far this story has traveled around the world. The autumn rain had been falling steadily for 3 hours, turning the streets of Manhattan into a maze of reflective puddles and hurried footsteps. Daniel Carter pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders as he navigated through the evening crowd on Fifth Avenue, his construction boots splashing through shallow pools of water that had gathered along the curb. The weight of another rejection letter from the bank felt heavier than the toolbox slung over his shoulder. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" Lily's voice echoed in his memory from that morning, her 8-year-old eyes too wise for her age as she'd watched him stuff the eviction notice into his back pocket. He'd forced a smile, then the same smile he'd been wearing like armor for the past 2 years since Sarah's death. "We're always okay, Princess," he'd told her, though the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Tonight, after another 14-hour shift, he was walking home to their cramped studio apartment with exactly $43 in his wallet and a pile of bills that seemed to grow taller by the day. The city moved around him in its usual chaotic rhythm. Yellow cabs honked through intersections, their headlights cutting through the early evening darkness. Street vendors called out their final offers of the day, hoping to clear their inventory before heading home. The smell of roasted chestnuts mixed with exhaust fumes, and the distinct scent of rain on hot asphalt. Daniel was 3 blocks from the subway when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It wasn't quite a scream, more like a sharp intake of breath, followed by the unmistakable thud of someone hitting concrete. His head snapped toward the sound, and through the crowd of people he saw her. A woman in an expensive gray coat had collapsed beside a black Mercedes, her body convulsing as people stood around her in a helpless circle. Some were already pulling out their phones to record, others were backing away as if whatever had happened might be contagious. But Daniel saw something else entirely. He saw someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's everything lying on cold concrete while the world watched. His toolbox hit the ground with a metallic crash as he pushed through the crowd. "Call 911!" he shouted over his shoulder, dropping to his knees beside the woman. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that had come loose from what had probably been a perfect updo. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her lips were turning blue. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Daniel's voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He'd taken CPR classes when Lily was born. Sarah had insisted on it, saying, "You never knew when you might need to save a life." He'd never imagined it would be a stranger's life on a busy Manhattan street. The woman's eyes fluttered open for a moment, unfocused and frightened. I can't," she whispered, her hand clutching weakly at her chest. "Heart attack." Daniel muttered, his mind racing through everything he remembered from those classes. "It's okay, you're going to be okay. What's your name?" "Evelyn." She managed her voice barely audible above the city noise. "Evelyn, I'm Daniel. I need you to stay with me, okay? Help is coming." He could hear sirens in the distance, but they seemed impossibly far away. "Can you tell me what happened?" "Any chest pain before this?" She nodded weakly, tears streaming down her face. "Meeting. Stress. Everything went dark." Daniel looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Most people were still recording. A few were trying to be helpful by shouting advice, but no one else had stepped forward. A man in an expensive suit, probably her driver, based on the way he was hovering near the Mercedes, was pacing and talking rapidly into his phone. "Mr. Rodriguez needs to know immediately," the driver was saying. "Yes, sir, she's on the ground. I don't know what to do." "You," Daniel called out to the driver. "What's her full name? Any medical conditions I should know about?" The driver looked startled to be addressed. "Evelyn Grant. She has a heart condition. Takes medication. It's in her purse somewhere." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. Even he recognized that name, Evelyn Grant, CEO of Grant Industries, one of the most powerful women in New York. But right now, she wasn't a billionaire CEO. She was just a scared woman who needed help. "Evelyn, I need you to focus on my voice," Daniel said gently, taking her hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "You're having a hard episode, but you're strong. I can see it in your eyes. We're going to get through this together." The sirens were getting closer, but Daniel could see Evelyn's condition deteriorating. Her breathing was becoming more labored, and her grip on his hand was weakening. "Tell me about someone you love," Daniel said, trying to keep her conscious. "Someone who's waiting for you to come home." Evelyn's eyes struggled to focus on him. "No one," she whispered, and the loneliness in those two words hit Daniel like a physical blow. "Work. Only work." "That's not true," Daniel said firmly. "I can see it in your face. You've got people who care about you. What about family?" "Brother, in California. We don't—" She trailed off, her eyes starting to close. No, stay with me, Evelyn." Daniel squeezed her hand tighter. "My daughter Lily, she's 8 years old. Every morning she tells me 3 things she's grateful for. You know what she said today? She said she was grateful for strangers who help other strangers. She said the world is full of good people, even when it doesn't look like it." A small smile flickered across Evelyn's pale lips. "Smart girl. She is. And she'd want me to tell you that you're not alone. Right now, in this moment, you're not alone." Daniel could see the paramedics pushing through the crowd, now their equipment bags in hand. "They're here, Evelyn. The cavalry has arrived." The lead paramedic, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, knelt down beside them. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back so we can work." "His name is Daniel," Evelyn said with more strength than she'd shown in minutes. He saved me." "I just held your hand," Daniel said softly, starting to move away as the medical team took over. "You saved yourself by fighting." As the paramedics worked, Daniel watched from a few feet away. They quickly established that Evelyn was having a significant cardiac event and began preparing to transport her to the hospital. The crowd had grown larger, and Daniel noticed several people with cameras and notepads. Reporters who had somehow already caught wind of the story. "Excuse me, sir." A young woman with a press badge approached him. "I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. Can you tell me what happened here?" Daniel shook his head. "Just someone who needed help. That's all." "But this is Evelyn Grant, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. Did you know who she was when you stopped to help?" "Didn't matter who she was." Daniel said, his eyes still on Evelyn as the paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher. "Someone needed help." The reporter persisted. "Can I get your name? Our viewers would love to know more about the Good Samaritan who—" "No," Daniel said firmly, turning away from the camera. "This isn't about me." As the ambulance pulled away, its lights painting red and blue patterns on the wet asphalt, Daniel stood alone on the sidewalk. The crowd was dispersing, the excitement over. His toolbox lay forgotten where he'd dropped it, and he picked it up with hands that were finally starting to shake. The driver, who had been with Evelyn, approached him hesitantly. "Sir, I wanted to thank you. Mrs. Grant, she's like family to many of us who work for her. What you did tonight, anyone would have done the same," Daniel said, though they both knew that wasn't true. The dozen people who had stood by recording were proof of that. "I don't think so," the driver said. "My name is Marcus. I've been with Mrs. Grant for 5 years. She's going to want to thank you properly when she's better." Daniel was already walking away. Just tell her to take care of herself, and maybe call that brother in California. The subway ride home passed in a blur. Daniel sat in the fluorescent-lit car watching his reflection in the dark windows as the train rocked through underground tunnels. His clothes were damp from the rain, and there was a small blood stain on his shirt sleeve where Evelyn had gripped his arm. He thought about her eyes, how scared they'd been, but also how determined, and how alone she'd seemed. When he finally climbed the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment, Daniel found Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, who watched Lily when he worked late, waiting in the hallway. "Danny, there you are," she said in her accented English. "Lily's been asking for you. She finished her homework and made you a drawing." "Thanks, Mrs. Chen. I'm sorry I'm so late. The trains were delayed because of the rain." It wasn't entirely a lie he had waited an extra 20 minutes for his connection, though that was because he'd been thinking about Evelyn Grant and whether she was okay. No problem. She's a good girl, that Lily. She tells me you help build new houses for people. Very nice work." Daniel managed a tired smile. Something like that. Inside the small apartment, Lily was curled up on their second-hand couch in her pajamas, a drawing tablet balanced on her knees. The apartment was tiny, just 1 room, with a Murphy bed, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, barely big enough to turn around in. But Lily had made it home with her drawings taped to the walls, and her stuffed animals arranged on every available surface. "Daddy?" She jumped up and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You're all wet." "Just rain, kiddo. What did you make me today?" She led him to the couch and showed him her latest creation, a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "It's us," she explained. "And I drew us rich people clothes because someday we're going to have a real house with our own rooms and maybe a dog." Daniel's heart clenched. "Lil, you know money isn't what makes people happy, right?" "I know," she said seriously. "But it would be nice to not have to whisper when Mrs. Rodriguez is sleeping, because our walls are so thin. And maybe we could get the kind of cereal that has marshmallows sometimes." "Someday," Daniel promised, though he wasn't sure how. "Did you remember to do your 3 grateful things today?" Lily nodded eagerly. "I'm grateful for Mrs. Chen teaching me how to make paper flowers. I'm grateful for pizza day at school tomorrow. And I'm grateful that you always come home even when you're really tired." "I'll always come home to you, princess. Always." As he tucked Lily into the Murphy bed they shared, Daniel thought about Evelyn Grant lying in a hospital bed somewhere across the city. He wondered if she had anyone sitting beside her, anyone to hold her hand the way he held Lily's every night as she fell asleep. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was drowsy. "Did anything special happen today?" Daniel considered telling her about what had happened, about helping someone who needed it. But Lily already worried too much about grown-up things. "Just a regular day, kiddo. Sweet dreams." But as he sat in the apartment's only chair, listening to Lily's breathing, even out into sleep, Daniel knew it hadn't been a regular day at all. Somewhere in the city, Evelyn Grant was fighting for her life, and he found himself hoping that she was as strong as she'd seemed in those brief moments when she'd looked into his eyes and chosen to keep fighting. He pulled out his phone and searched for news about what had happened. There were already several articles online. Billionaire CEO Evelyn Grant hospitalized after collapse. Grant Industries stock drops following CEO's medical emergency. Mystery Good Samaritan saves business mogul's life. The articles were mostly speculation, but one included a photo taken by a bystander. Daniel could see himself kneeling beside Evelyn, his face serious and focused. The caption read, "Unidentified man provides aid to Grant Industries CEO Evelyn Grant following her collapse on 5th Avenue." Daniel closed the browser and put his phone away. Tomorrow he'd have to wake up at 5 a.m. for another construction shift, another day of trying to make ends meet in a city that seemed designed to grind people like him into dust. But tonight, he'd helped save someone's life. And maybe for just a moment, he'd helped someone feel less alone. 3 miles away, in a private room at Mount Sinai Hospital, Evelyn Grant was awake and staring at the ceiling. The doctors had stabilized her condition, but she'd need surgery within the next few days to address the blockage in her coronary artery. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent so many years building walls around her heart to protect it from emotional damage that she'd ignored the physical warning signs until it nearly killed her. But all she could think about was the man who'd knelt beside her on the sidewalk. Daniel. He'd looked at her like she was Evelyn Grant, billionaire CEO, but like she was simply a human being who needed help. When was the last time someone had looked at her that way? "Mrs. Grant." Dr. Peterson entered the room, clipboard in hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," she said honestly. "But alive, thanks to a stranger." The paramedics said someone performed excellent first aid before they arrived. "Probably saved your life by keeping you conscious and calm." "I need to find him," Evelyn said. "This Daniel person. He has a daughter named Lily." Dr. Peterson looked concerned. "Mrs. Grant, you need to focus on your recovery right now. The surgery we discussed." "I'll have the surgery," Evelyn interrupted. "But first I need to find the man who saved my life. Can someone make that happen?" Within an hour, Evelyn's assistant Marcus was working with the hospital's security team to review footage from nearby cameras. The press had already dubbed Daniel the mystery hero, but Evelyn was determined to solve that mystery. For the first time in years, finding someone mattered more to her than any business deal, any merger, any quarterly report. Because Daniel had done something no one in her carefully constructed world had ever done, he'd seen her as a person worth saving, not because of what she owned or controlled, but simply because she was human. And in that moment on the cold sidewalk when he'd told her she wasn't alone, Evelyn had felt something she'd forgotten existed: hope. Now she needed to find him, not just to say thank you, but to understand how a stranger's kindness had managed to do what years of therapy and success had failed to accomplish. It had made her want to live for something more than just work. The city that never slept continued its endless rhythm outside her hospital window. Millions of people living their separate lives. But somewhere out there was a construction worker named Daniel with a daughter named Lily. And for the first time in decades, Evelyn Grant was more interested in finding one person than in running an empire. The morning after the incident brought an unusual quietness to Daniel's routine. As he prepared instant coffee in the dim light of dawn, the events of the previous evening felt almost dreamlike. Had he really knelt on 5th Avenue holding the hand of one of the most powerful women in America? The small bloodstain on his work shirt, now hanging over the back of their only chair, confirmed it had been real. "Daddy, you're making your thinking face again," Lily observed from the Murphy bed, her hair sticking up in several directions. "Are you worried about something?" Daniel forced a smile as he handed her a bowl of cereal. "Just thinking about work stuff, princess. Nothing for you to worry about." But as they walked to Lily's school that morning, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Evelyn Grant's frightened eyes, or the way she'd said "no one" when he'd asked about people who loved her. It seemed impossible that someone with her resources and influence could be truly alone, yet something in her voice had convinced him it was true. "Mr. Carter." Lily's teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, approached them at the school entrance. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Daniel's stomach dropped. Teacher conferences usually meant problems he couldn't afford to solve. "Lily, go find Emma and play until the bell rings, okay?" When Lily was out of earshot, Ms. Rodriguez's expression softened. "It's nothing bad, Mr. Carter. Actually, I wanted to tell you how proud I am of Lily's resilience. She wrote an essay yesterday about heroes, and she wrote about you, about how you help build homes for families and how you take care of her all by yourself." Relief flooded through Daniel. "She's a good kid. She doesn't see the struggles, just the love. That's because you've done an excellent job protecting her from adult worries while still teaching her important values. But I did want to mention that she's been asking about why some families have more money than others. The class is doing a unit on community helpers, and some of the children have been talking about their parents' jobs." Daniel nodded, understanding the unspoken concern. Lily was becoming aware of their financial situation, despite his efforts to shield her from it. "I'll talk to her about it. Thank you for letting me know." As he walked to the construction site, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from his foreman. "Carter needs you on the Morrison project today. Overtime available if you want it." He quickly typed back, "I'll take it." Every extra hour meant a few more dollars toward keeping their apartment, toward maybe buying Lily those marshmallow cereals she'd mentioned. Daniel had been working construction for 8 years, ever since he'd dropped out of college when Sarah got pregnant. He'd planned to go back to school after Lily was born, but then Sarah had gotten sick and medical bills had consumed everything. After she died, survival had become the only goal. The Morrison project was a luxury high-rise going up on the Upper East Side, the kind of building where Daniel's annual salary might cover 2 months' rent. As he operated the crane that morning, lifting steel beams into place, he could see the city sprawling below him. Somewhere down there, Evelyn Grant was probably in a hospital room surrounded by the best medical care money could buy. "Hey, Carter," his coworker Jake called out during their lunch break. "You see this crazy story about that billionaire lady who had a heart attack yesterday? Says some mystery guy saved her life." Daniel nearly choked on his sandwich. "Yeah, that's good someone helped her. Look at this." Jake showed him his phone screen. "They're calling him the mystery hero. Says he disappeared before anyone could get his name. Rich lady's probably gonna want to reward him big time when she finds him." "Maybe he doesn't want to be found," Daniel said carefully. "Are you kidding? If I saved a billionaire's life, I'd be camping outside her office waiting for my reward. Guy's probably just modest. They always find these heroes eventually." Daniel went back to work with a growing unease. He hadn't considered that Evelyn might try to find him, or that the story would attract media attention. He'd helped because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected anything in return. Meanwhile, across the city, Evelyn was discovering just how difficult it was to find someone who didn't want to be found. Despite having a team of investigators, security footage from multiple angles, and witness descriptions, Daniel seemed to have vanished into the 8 million people who called New York home. "Ma'am, we've identified him as a construction worker based on his clothing and the tools he was carrying." Her head of security, James Mitchell, reported from his position beside her hospital bed. "But without a company logo or vehicle identification, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack." "Keep looking," Evelyn said, adjusting her position carefully. The doctors had her on medication that made her drowsy, but her mind was sharp enough to know this mattered more than any business she'd ever conducted. Someone that selfless, that kind, people like that don't just disappear. Mrs. Grant. Dr. Peterson entered the room with her chart. I've scheduled your surgery for tomorrow morning. The procedure should take about 3 hours, and if everything goes well, you'll be looking at a full recovery within 6 weeks. Fine, Evelyn said absently, her attention still on the search efforts. James. What about the little girl he mentioned, Lily, 8 years old? There are approximately 4,000 girls named Lily between ages 7 and 9 in the 5 boroughs, ma'am. Without a last name, it's... Then check school records near where it happened. Single fathers picking up daughters named Lily. Cross-reference with construction companies operating in Manhattan. Evelyn's business mind was taking over, treating this like any other problem that needed solving. But as the afternoon wore on and the search continued to yield nothing, Evelyn found herself staring out the hospital window at the city below. For the first time in her adult life, her money and influence couldn't simply make something happen. Daniel had saved her life and then disappeared into the anonymity of ordinary people living ordinary lives. 3 floors below in the hospital cafeteria, Daniel was grabbing coffee during his afternoon break from the construction site. The Morrison project was across the street from Mount Sinai, and he'd been fighting the urge all day to ask about Evelyn's condition. He told himself it was just human curiosity, but the truth was more complicated. Something about their brief encounter had stayed with him, a connection he couldn't quite name. "Excuse me," a woman's voice behind him made him turn. "You're Daniel, aren't you?" He found himself face to face with a well-dressed woman in her 50s, her expression hopeful but uncertain. For a moment, his heart stopped thinking somehow Evelyn had found him. But this woman was different, older, with kind eyes and silver hair. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Daniel asked carefully. "I'm Patricia Chen, Mrs. Grant's personal assistant. I was at the scene yesterday when you helped her. I saw you refuse to talk to the reporters, saw you walk away without giving your name." She paused, studying his face. "You're him, aren't you? The man who saved her life?" Daniel's first instinct was to deny it, but something in Patricia's manner made him nod slowly. "How did you find me?" "I've been checking every hospital coffee shop and restaurant within a 6-block radius of the incident. Mrs. Grant is desperate to thank you properly. She's been beside herself trying to locate you." "Look, I appreciate that, but I don't need any thanks. I just did what anyone would do." Patricia's laugh was gentle but knowing. "Mr. Daniel, I've worked for Evelyn Grant for 12 years. In that time, I've seen her interact with thousands of people, employees, competitors, board members, politicians. You're the first person in all those years who helped her without wanting something in return. She needs to see you." "I really don't think—" "She's having surgery tomorrow morning," Patricia interrupted. "A serious procedure to repair the damage from her heart attack. She's scared, though she'd never admit it. And she keeps talking about the man who told her she wasn't alone." Daniel felt his resolve wavering. The image of Evelyn lying frightened on the sidewalk flashed through his mind, followed by the memory of her saying "no one" when he'd asked about people who loved her. "I have to pick up my daughter from school," he said finally. "Bring her," Patricia said immediately. "Mrs. Grant would love to meet the little girl whose father taught her about gratitude." An hour later, Daniel found himself walking through the polished corridors of Mount Sinai's private wing, Lily's small hand tucked in his. She was practically vibrating with excitement at the unexpected adventure. "Daddy is the lady we're visiting, really super rich," Lily whispered as they followed Patricia toward Evelyn's room. "Money doesn't make someone better or worse than anyone else, Lil. She's just a person who needed help." "I know. But Mrs. Chen at school said rich people sometimes live in castles. Do you think she has a castle?" Before Daniel could answer, Patricia was knocking on a door marked "Private, No Admittance." Mrs. Grant, I have someone here who's been very eager to meet you. The door opened to reveal a spacious private room that looked more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. Evelyn was sitting up in bed, her dark hair pulled back, wearing a hospital gown that somehow still managed to look elegant. When her eyes met Daniel's, her face lit up with genuine relief and gratitude. "Daniel," she said softly, and he was surprised by how much emotion she packed into his name. "I was beginning to think I'd dreamed you." "Ms. Grant." Daniel stepped forward awkwardly, unsure of the protocol for visiting billionaires in hospitals. "I just wanted to check how you were feeling." "Much better, thanks to you." Her eyes shifted to Lily, who was peeking out from behind Daniel's leg. "And this must be the famous Lily I've heard so much about." Lily stepped forward with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Hi, Daddy says you were sick and he helped you feel better. Are you going to be okay now?" Evelyn's smile was the first truly unguarded expression Daniel had seen from her. "I think I'm going to be just fine, sweetheart. Your daddy is a very brave man." "I know," Lily said matter-of-factly. "He fixes broken things for work and he fixed you too. He's really good at fixing stuff." "Lily," Daniel warned gently, but Evelyn was laughing a genuine, delighted sound. "She's wonderful," Evelyn said to Daniel. "Absolutely wonderful." "Thank you for seeing us," Daniel said, still feeling out of place in the expensive room. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right. We should probably go." "Please don't," Evelyn said quickly, then caught herself and softened her tone. "I mean, if you have time, I'd love to talk. It's been a very long day of doctors and tests and people hovering over me. It would be nice to have a normal conversation." Lily had already made herself comfortable in the chair beside Evelyn's bed. "What's that thing for?" she asked, pointing to the heart monitor. "It tells the doctors how my heart is doing," Evelyn explained. "See these little lines? Each one is a heartbeat." "Wow. It's like a picture of being alive." Lily was fascinated. "Daddy, look how fast her heart goes." "That's because I'm excited to meet you," Evelyn said, and Daniel noticed she seemed to mean it. "Your father tells me you're very good at finding things to be grateful for." "Uh-huh." "Every day I think of 3 things. Today, I'm grateful that Daddy brought me to meet you, and that you're feeling better, and—" She paused dramatically. "That you have really pretty hair even though you're in the hospital." Evelyn reached up self-consciously to touch her hair. "Thank you, sweetheart. That might be the nicest compliment I've gotten in years." As Lily chattered on about school and her drawings and her hopes for a dog someday, Daniel watched Evelyn's face transform. The guarded, controlled expression he'd seen in newspaper photos was replaced by something softer, more human. She listened to Lily with genuine attention, asking questions, and laughing at the 8-year-old's observations about the world. "Lily," Evelyn said eventually, "would you like to see something special?" She reached for her phone and showed Lily the view from her office window, a panoramic shot of Manhattan taken from the 42nd floor of the Grant Industries building. "You can see the whole city from up there," Lily breathed. "It must be like being a giant. Sometimes it feels that way," Evelyn said thoughtfully. "But sometimes even when you're up that high, you can feel very small." "That's silly," Lily said with the certainty of childhood. "People aren't small or big based on where they stand. My daddy taught me that. He says what makes you big is how you treat other people." Evelyn's eyes found Daniel's across the room. "Your daddy is a very wise man." "The wisest," Lily agreed. "He knows everything about everything except how to braid hair. But Mrs. Chen is teaching him." "Lily," Daniel interjected, feeling heat creep up his neck. "I think we've taken up enough of Ms. Grant's time." "Actually," Evelyn said, I was hoping I could speak with you privately for a moment, Daniel. Lily, would you mind stepping out with Patricia? I think she mentioned something about ice cream in the cafeteria. Ice cream! Lily jumped up immediately. Daddy, can I please? After Patricia had escorted an excited Lily out of the room, Daniel found himself alone with Evelyn for the first time since the sidewalk. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken thoughts. I've been trying to find you for 2 days, Evelyn said finally. Do you have any idea how frustrating it is for someone like me to not be able to find someone? I imagine pretty frustrating, Daniel said, settling into the chair Lily had vacated. But I told you, you don't need to thank me. This isn't about thanks, Daniel. Well, not just about thanks. Evelyn struggled to find the right words. When I was lying on that sidewalk, I thought I was going to die. And the thing that scared me most wasn't death, it was the realization that there was no one who would really miss me. No one whose world would be smaller without me in it. Daniel felt the weight of her confession. I'm sure that's not true. It is true, Evelyn said quietly. I have employees who depend on me, business associates, who profit from knowing me, a board of directors who need me to make them money. But no one who loves me just for existing. No one like Lily loves you. Ms. Grant. Evelyn, please. Evelyn, you're in a hospital bed facing surgery tomorrow. It's natural to feel isolated and scared, but that doesn't mean your life doesn't have meaning. Doesn't it? She turned to look out the window at the city skyline. I've spent 20 years building an empire, and for what? So I can die alone in a hospital room while strangers take care of me. You're not alone right now, Daniel pointed out gently, because a stranger with a kind heart decided to visit the woman he saved. Evelyn turned back to him. Daniel, I want to offer you something. Daniel tensed. I told you I don't want any reward. Not a reward, a job. Evelyn's voice became more businesslike, but Daniel could hear the vulnerability underneath. I need someone to head up our new community development initiative. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who knows what regular families need. The salary would be substantial, enough to give Lily the kind of future she deserves. The offer hung in the air between them. Daniel thought about the eviction notice in his pocket, about Lily's drawing of them in rich people clothes, about the way she'd whispered about wanting cereal with marshmallows. You don't even know me, he said finally. You don't know if I'm qualified, if I'm trustworthy, if I can do the job. You risked your own safety to help a stranger. You walked away from reporters who would have made you famous. You brought your daughter to visit someone in the hospital because you thought it was the right thing to do. Evelyn's voice was steady now, sure. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. And what about qualifications? I'm a construction worker, Evelyn. I dropped out of college 12 years ago. Some of the most successful people I know never finished college. You have something more valuable than a degree. You have integrity and compassion. The rest can be learned. Daniel stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city, where he'd spent his entire life struggling to make ends meet. The offer was tempting beyond anything he'd imagined. But something about it felt wrong, like accepting charity disguised as opportunity. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course, but Daniel... When he turned back to her, Evelyn's expression was more open than he'd yet seen it. This isn't charity. I'm not offering you this job because I feel guilty or grateful. I'm offering it because I think you could make a real difference. And because I think you might help me remember what it feels like to do work that actually matters. Before Daniel could respond, the door opened, and Lily bounded back in, her face smeared with chocolate ice cream. Daddy. Miss Patricia let me have 2 scoops, and she told me about all the places she's traveled for work. Did you know there are beaches with pink sand? I did not know that, Daniel said, pulling out a napkin to clean Lily's face. What do you say to Ms. Grant for the ice cream? Thank you. Lily threw her arms around Evelyn in an impulsive hug that caught the billionaire completely off guard. I hope your surgery goes really good tomorrow and you feel all better. Evelyn's eyes filled with unexpected tears as she hugged Lily back. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn caught Daniel's hand. Think about what I said. But more than that, think about what Lily deserves. Think about what you deserve. Walking out of the hospital, Lily skipped between puddles from the afternoon rain. Daddy, I really like Ms. Evelyn. She seemed kind of sad, though. Do you think she needs more friends? Maybe she does, Princess. Maybe she does. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Daniel sat in their tiny apartment, staring at the business card Evelyn had given him. On it was her direct number and a handwritten note. Thank you for reminding me that courage comes in many forms. Call me when you're ready to be brave again. He thought about Lily's drawing of them in rich people clothes, about the way she'd whispered about wanting their own rooms, about the college fund he'd never been able to start for her. But he also thought about the way Evelyn had lit up when Lily hugged her, about the loneliness he'd heard in her voice when she'd said, "No one." Maybe Daniel thought, as he finally drifted off to sleep on the thin mattress they shared, maybe helping Evelyn Grant wouldn't just change his and Lily's lives. Maybe it would change hers too. And maybe for the first time since Sarah's death, he was about to take a leap of faith that could transform everything. Across the city, Evelyn lay awake in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about a little girl's hug and a man who'd seen her not as a billionaire or a CEO, but simply as a human being worth saving. Tomorrow she would have surgery to repair her heart. But tonight, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was already beginning to heal in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. 3 weeks passed before Daniel finally made the call. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, weighing Evelyn's offer against his pride. 3 weeks of watching Lily pretend she didn't notice when he watered down the milk to make it last longer. 3 weeks of staring at overdue notices that seemed to multiply like weeds in their cramped mailbox. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when Lily's teacher pulled him aside again. Mr. Carter, I hate to bring this up, but Lily hasn't had lunch money for the past week. She's been telling the other children she's not hungry, but I can see. I'll take care of it. Daniel interrupted, his face burning with shame. Tomorrow. She'll have lunch money tomorrow. But as he walked to another day of construction work, Daniel knew he was lying. After rent, utilities, and basic groceries, there wasn't enough left for school lunches. He'd been giving Lily larger breakfasts and dinners, hoping she wouldn't notice the missing middle meal. That evening, as he watched Lily do homework at their tiny kitchen table using the last few pages of a notebook he couldn't afford to replace, Daniel pulled out Evelyn's business card. The edges were worn from handling, and her handwritten note had become as familiar as a prayer. Call me when you're ready to be brave again. Daddy. Lily looked up from her math problems. Are you okay? You look like you're thinking really hard thoughts. Just grown-up stuff, Princess. How's the homework coming? Good. We're learning about different kinds of jobs people have. I wrote about construction workers who build homes for families. She held up her paper proudly. And I wrote about CEOs who help lots of people with their companies. Ms. Rodriguez said both jobs are important for communities. Daniel's heart ached. Even at 8, Lily was trying to make him feel better about their situation. They are both important, sweetheart. Every honest job has value. I know, but Daddy... Lily's voice became smaller. Jenny at school said her mom thinks we might be poor because you wear the same work clothes every day and because I don't buy lunch anymore. I told her, we're not poor, we just save money for important things. That's right, isn't it? The innocence in her question nearly broke him. You're absolutely right, Lil. We're rich in all the ways that matter most. After Lily fell asleep, Daniel stepped onto the fire escape outside their window and dialed the number he'd memorized weeks ago. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Evelyn Grant. It's Daniel Carter. I hope I'm not calling too late. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, he could hear the smile in her voice. Daniel, I was beginning to think you'd decided I was crazy. Maybe a little, he admitted, and was rewarded with her laugh. How are you feeling? How did the surgery go? Better than expected. The doctors say I have the heart of a 30-year-old now thanks to modern medicine and excellent care. Her tone grew more serious. And thanks to someone who made sure I lived long enough to receive that care. I'm glad you're okay. Daniel gripped the phone tighter, watching the city lights twinkle below. About your offer, you've been thinking about it. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. But I need to know this is real, Evelyn. Not charity, not gratitude, but a genuine job offer for someone qualified to do the work. Meet me tomorrow, she said without hesitation. Come to my office. Let me show you what I have in mind, and you can decide for yourself if it's something you want to pursue. I can't just leave work in the middle of the day. Daniel, if you take this position, you'll never have to worry about requesting time off for something important again. Take a sick day. Tell them you have a job interview. Tell them the truth. The next morning, Daniel found himself standing outside the glass towers of Grant Industries, wearing his only dress shirt and a tie he'd borrowed from his neighbor. The building stretched 45 stories into the Manhattan sky, its facade reflecting the morning sun like a mirror. People in expensive suits moved in and out of the lobby with the confident stride of those who belonged in such places. Mr. Carter, a young woman in a crisp blazer approached him. I'm Sarah Kim, Ms. Grant's executive assistant. She's waiting for you. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, Daniel stepped into a reception area that was larger than most apartments, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Central Park. This way, please. Sarah led him down a corridor lined with contemporary art that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year. Evelyn's office was even more impressive than the photos on her website suggested. The space was elegant, but not ostentatious, filled with natural light, and furnished with pieces that spoke of success without shouting about it. Evelyn stood behind her desk, wearing a navy blue suit that emphasized her recovery and return to power. But when she saw Daniel, her corporate mask slipped into something warmer. Daniel, thank you for coming. She gestured to a seating area near the windows. Please sit. Can I get you coffee, water? Coffee would be great, he said, still taking in the view. From this height, the city looked like a complex organism, with streams of traffic flowing between clusters of buildings like blood through arteries. Impressive, isn't it? Evelyn followed his gaze as Sarah poured coffee from a service set that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. I sometimes forget how removed this perspective can make you feel from real life down there. It's beautiful, Daniel said honestly. But I imagine it could be lonely too. Evelyn's expression grew thoughtful. Very lonely. Which brings me to why I asked you here. She opened a folder on the coffee table between them. I want to show you something we've been developing, a community development initiative that's been stalled for 2 years because we couldn't find the right person to run it. The folder contained architectural renderings, demographic studies, and financial projections for what appeared to be a massive undertaking. Daniel saw plans for affordable housing, community centers, job training facilities, and mixed-use developments that would transform entire neighborhoods. "This is ambitious," Daniel said, studying the documents. "You're talking about changing people's lives." "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Evelyn leaned forward, her enthusiasm evident. "We have the resources. We have the political connections. We have the financial backing. What we don't have is someone who understands what these communities actually need, someone who's lived the struggle we're trying to address." "And you think that's me? I know that's you." Evelyn pulled out another document. "This is the salary structure for the position. The base salary is $180,000 annually, with performance bonuses that could bring it to $250,000. Full benefits, including health, dental, and vision coverage for you and Lily. Education benefits that would cover her private school tuition and eventually college. Company car expense account, and a relocation allowance if you choose to move to a better neighborhood." Daniel stared at the numbers, his mind struggling to process them. It was more money than he'd made in the past 3 years combined. "This seems too good to be true." "It's market rate for this level of responsibility, Daniel. Actually, it's on the conservative side. Other companies would offer more for someone with your unique perspective and integrity. But I don't have experience managing multi-million-dollar projects. I don't have an MBA or connections in city government or—" "You have something more valuable," Evelyn interrupted. "You have authenticity. You've lived in the communities we want to help. You understand what it's like to worry about rent money and school lunch funds and whether you can afford to take your child to the doctor. That's not something you can learn in business school." Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking down at the ant-like people moving through the streets below. "What if I fail? What if I'm not smart enough or sophisticated enough for this world? Then you'll learn and adapt just like you did when you became a single father, just like you did when you took on construction work to support your family." Evelyn joined him at the window. "Daniel, I'm not offering you this job because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I need someone I can trust, someone who won't be corrupted by the power and money that comes with this position. Someone who will always remember that behind every statistic and demographic study, there are real people trying to build better lives for their families." Before Daniel could respond, Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Grant, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the board meeting has been moved up to 11:30. Evelyn checked her watch and frowned. "I have to go, but Daniel, I want you to take these materials home. Study them. Talk to Lily about what this could mean for your family. Talk to anyone whose opinion you trust. But know this, the position is yours if you want it. Just say yes." The walk back to the construction site felt surreal. Daniel clutched the folder of documents like a lifeline, his mind spinning with possibilities and fears in equal measure. The salary alone would change everything for him and Lily, but was he ready to leave behind the only world he'd ever known? "Carter," his foreman Jake called out as Daniel returned to the site. "Where the hell have you been? We've got a schedule to keep." "Sorry, Jake. Had a medical appointment." "Well, shake a leg. We're behind on the beam installation, and the inspector's coming this afternoon." Daniel threw himself into the physical work, hoping the familiar rhythm of construction would quiet his racing thoughts. But as he operated the crane lifting steel into place high above the city, he couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn's offer. By the time his shift ended, he'd made his decision. That evening, as he and Lily shared a dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches and canned soup, Daniel broached the subject carefully. "Lil, what would you think if Daddy got a different kind of job?" Lily looked up from her sandwich, interested. "Like what kind of an office job? Working with a company that helps families find better places to live, safer neighborhoods, good schools. Would you still build things? In a way, yes. But instead of putting up steel beams, I'd be helping put together programs and services that make communities stronger. Lily considered this seriously. Would it pay more money so we could get our own rooms and maybe that dog we talked about? Daniel's throat tightened. It would pay a lot more money, Princess. Enough for our own apartment with separate bedrooms, enough for you to go to a really good school, enough for us to not worry about things like lunch money anymore. That sounds really good, Daddy, but Lily's face grew concerned. Would you be happy because money doesn't matter if you're not happy? The wisdom in his 8-year-old daughter's question humbled him. I think I would be happy, Lil. It would be a chance to help other families like ours, families who are struggling and need someone to believe in them. Then you should do it, Lily said with the certainty of childhood. And Daddy, I'm proud of you no matter what job you have. The next morning, Daniel called Evelyn's office and accepted the position. Within a week, he'd given notice at the construction site, signed a contract that still seemed too good to be real, and begun the transition into a world he'd only observed from the outside. His first day at Grant Industries was overwhelming. Sarah Kim gave him a tour of the offices, introduced him to key staff members, and provided him with a company laptop phone and corporate credit card. His new office was on the 38th floor with a view of the Hudson River and enough space for a proper desk conference table and seating area. Ms. Grant wanted me to give you this. Sarah handed him an envelope marked personal and confidential. Inside was a handwritten note from Evelyn. Welcome to Grant Industries. I know this feels overwhelming right now, but remember, you belong here not because of what you don't know, but because of what you do know. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and know that I believe in you completely. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, reports, and crash courses in corporate culture. Daniel found himself working with urban planners, economists, city officials, and community leaders, learning to navigate the complex world of public-private partnerships and municipal politics. There were moments when he felt completely out of his depth, but gradually he began to see how his unique perspective added value to discussions that had previously been dominated by theory and statistics. The problem with most development projects, he told a room full of executives during his third week, is that they're designed by people who've never had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. We can build the most beautiful, affordable housing in the world, but if it's not accessible to public transportation, if there aren't good schools nearby, if there's no grocery store within walking distance, we're not really helping families. We're just moving poverty from one location to another. The room fell silent, and for a moment Daniel worried he'd overstepped. Then the head of urban development leaned forward with interest. Go on. I'm saying we need to think about these projects the way residents will experience them, not the way they look on paper. A family with one car and 2 working parents doesn't need a beautiful community center if they can't afford to use it because they're working 3 jobs just to pay rent. They need wraparound services, childcare, job training, healthcare, education, integrated into the community design. After the meeting, Evelyn found Daniel in his office, her expression unreadable. That was quite a presentation, she said, closing the door behind her. Daniel's stomach dropped. I hope I didn't speak out of turn. I know I'm still learning the corporate protocols. Daniel, stop. Evelyn's serious expression broke into a smile. You just articulated what our development team has been struggling to understand for 2 years. You took a room full of MBAs and showed them something they'd never seen before, the human side of urban planning. Relief flooded through him. I just said what seemed obvious. That's exactly why you're perfect for this job. What seems obvious to you is revolutionary to people who've spent their careers looking at spreadsheets instead of real lives. Evelyn settled into the chair across from his desk. How are you adjusting, really? It's intimidating, Daniel admitted. Sometimes I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Like eventually someone's going to realize I don't belong here. Imposter syndrome. Evelyn nodded. I felt it for years when I first took over this company. The difference is I actually was pretending to be someone I wasn't. You're just being yourself in a new environment, and that authenticity is exactly what we need. Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah's voice through the intercom. Ms. Grant, I have Mayor Rodriguez's office on line 1. They want to discuss the East Harlem project timeline. Take a message, Evelyn replied. I'm in an important meeting. As weeks turned into months, Daniel found his confidence growing. He developed relationships with community leaders, attended city planning meetings, and began to see how his projects could genuinely transform neighborhoods. More importantly, he was building a real friendship with Evelyn. Their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, long conversations about urban policy that turned into discussions about parenthood, loneliness, and the weight of responsibility. Daniel learned that behind Evelyn's polished exterior was someone who genuinely cared about making a difference, someone who had been isolated by success and was hungry for authentic human connection. You know what I realized the other day? Evelyn said during one of their regular Friday afternoon debriefings. For the first time in years, I actually look forward to coming to work. The community development projects are pretty exciting, Daniel agreed. It's not the projects, Daniel. It's having someone here who reminds me why the work matters. Someone who challenges me to be better than I thought I could be. The intensity in her voice made Daniel look up from his reports. There was something in Evelyn's expression that made his breath catch a vulnerability and warmth that went beyond professional appreciation. Evelyn, he began, but she was already standing, smoothing her skirt and returning to her corporate composure. I should let you get back to work. Have a wonderful weekend with Lily. After she left, Daniel sat in his office trying to understand what had just happened. Over the past months, he'd come to genuinely care for Evelyn as a friend and colleague, but was there something more developing between them? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. She was brilliant, successful, and beautiful, but she was also his boss and moved in circles so far above his background that the gap seemed unbridgeable. That weekend, as he and Lily explored their new apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools, Daniel tried to push thoughts of Evelyn aside. The job had indeed transformed their lives. Lily was thriving in her new school. They had space to breathe, and for the first time in years, Daniel wasn't worried about basic survival. Daddy, I like our new home, Lily said as she arranged her stuffed animals on her own bed in her own room. But I miss Mrs. Chen from our old building. We can visit her anytime you want, Daniel promised. And you like your new school, right? I love it. And guess what? My teacher, Ms. Williams, says there's a program where kids can learn about business and maybe visit real companies. Do you think Ms. Evelyn would let my class visit her office sometime? I think she'd love that, Daniel said, picturing Evelyn's face lighting up at the prospect of meeting Lily's classmates. Monday morning brought a crisis that would test everything Daniel had learned about his new world. He arrived at the office to find Evelyn's assistant looking frantic. Mr. Carter, thank goodness you're here, Miss Grant collapsed during the board meeting this morning. The paramedics just took her to Mount Sinai. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What happened? Is she okay? I don't know. She was presenting the quarterly reports when she suddenly grabbed her chest and fell. Mr. Mitchell is with her, but... Sarah's voice broke. It looked exactly like what happened before when you saved her on the street. Daniel didn't remember making the decision to leave. One moment he was standing in the office lobby, the next he was in a taxi racing through Manhattan traffic toward the hospital. His mind kept replaying Evelyn's collapse on Fifth Avenue, The fear in her eyes, the way she'd said no one when he'd asked who loved her. Not this time, he thought as the taxi pulled up to the hospital entrance. This time she wouldn't be alone. The sterile fluorescent lights of Mount Sinai's emergency department felt like déjà vu as Daniel rushed through the automatic doors. The same antiseptic smell, the same urgent voices over intercoms, the same underlying current of life hanging in the balance. But this time everything felt different. This time it wasn't a stranger lying somewhere in the maze of medical equipment. It was Evelyn. "I'm looking for Evelyn Grant," Daniel told the receptionist, trying to keep his voice steady. "She was brought in about an hour ago." The woman's expression immediately became more guarded. "Are you family?" Daniel hesitated. What was he exactly, her employee, her friend? Something more complicated that he was only beginning to understand. I work with her. I was there when she had her first heart attack 6 months ago. I need to know if she's okay." "I can only release information to immediate family members, sir. You're welcome to wait in the family lounge, and when Ms. Grant is able to receive visitors." "Daniel." A familiar voice made him turn. James Mitchell. Evelyn's head of security approached with obvious relief. "Thank God you're here. She's been asking for you." "How is she? What happened?" James's weathered face was grave. "The doctors think it's another cardiac event, but they're not sure if it's related to her previous condition or something new. She's conscious, but weak. They're running tests now." He paused, studying Daniel's face. "She specifically asked me to find you. Said she needed to see you before they decide on treatment." "Can I see her?" "Follow me. The attending physician is Dr. Martinez. She treated Ms. Grant after her surgery last time. She's expecting you." As they walked through the corridors toward the cardiac unit, James spoke quietly. "Daniel, I need you to know something. In the 5 years I've worked for Ms. Grant, I've never seen her ask for anyone the way she asked for you today. When the paramedics were loading her into the ambulance, she grabbed my arm and said, 'Find Daniel. Don't let me face this alone.'" The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Whatever was happening between him and Evelyn, it had moved beyond professional courtesy or even friendship. She trusted him with her fear, her vulnerability, her mortality. Room 314. James indicated a door marked Cardiac Intensive Care. "She's awake, but Daniel, she's scared. I've seen Evelyn Grant face down hostile corporate takeovers, negotiate with world leaders, and rebuild this company from the ground up after her father's death. I've never seen her scared until today." Daniel knocked softly before entering. The room was similar to the one Evelyn had occupied after her first heart attack, but somehow it felt more ominous now. The beeping of monitors seemed more urgent, the medical equipment more threatening. Evelyn lay propped up in the hospital bed, her face pale, but her eyes alert. When she saw Daniel, her entire expression changed. "You came," she whispered, and there was such relief in her voice that Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Of course I came." He pulled a chair close to her bedside, automatically reaching for her hand, the way he had that night on Fifth Avenue. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm living in a nightmare that keeps repeating itself." Evelyn's fingers intertwined with his, and he could feel them trembling slightly. "They're saying it might not be my heart this time. They think it could be stress-related or anxiety or—" She trailed off, frustration evident in her voice. "What do you think it is?" "I think I'm falling apart," Evelyn said with brutal honesty. "I think 6 months of pretending I'm invincible caught up with me. I've been pushing myself harder than ever, trying to prove that heart attack didn't change me, that I'm still the same person who could work 18-hour days and never show weakness." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. Maybe the same person who could do that isn't the same person you want to be anymore. Before Evelyn could respond, a doctor in a white coat entered the room. She was a petite woman with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair, her manner both professional and compassionate. "Ms. Grant, I'm Dr. Martinez. We met after your surgery last year." She glanced at Daniel with mild curiosity. "And you are?" "Daniel Carter, I'm—" He looked at Evelyn, unsure how to define their relationship. "He's family," Evelyn said firmly, her eyes meeting Daniel's with an intensity that made his heart race. "Whatever you need to tell me, you can say in front of him." Dr. Martinez nodded and consulted her chart. "Ms. Grant, the good news is that this doesn't appear to be another heart attack. Your cardiac function is actually excellent. The surgery you had last year was very successful. However, what you experienced today was a severe panic attack that mimicked the symptoms of cardiac distress." "A panic attack?" Evelyn looked confused. "I don't have panic attacks. I don't panic." Actually, panic attacks are quite common in people who've experienced serious cardiac events. The body develops a kind of traumatic memory, and stress can trigger a fight or flight response that feels exactly like the original medical emergency. Daniel watched Evelyn's face as she processed this information. He could see her struggling with the implications that her legendary self-control had limits, that her body had betrayed her in front of her board of directors, that she was more vulnerable than she'd allowed herself to believe. "What triggered it?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. "I was presenting quarterly reports to the board," Evelyn said slowly. "It was a particularly contentious meeting. Several board members were questioning some of our new community development initiatives, suggesting they weren't profitable enough, that we should scale back." She paused, realization dawning. "They were attacking the programs Daniel and I have been working on." "The programs that matter most to you," Daniel added quietly. "Yes, and I realized that if they succeeded in cutting those programs, I'd not only be failing the communities we're trying to help, but I'd be failing you. I'd be proving that I brought you into this world just to watch it destroy something you believe in." Dr. Martinez observed this exchange with professional interest. "Ms. Grant, panic attacks often occur when we feel a loss of control over something that's deeply important to us. The fact that you experienced this during a threat to work that clearly has personal meaning suggests that your priorities have shifted significantly since your cardiac event." "What does that mean for treatment?" Daniel asked. "Physically, Ms. Grant is fine. We'll keep her overnight for observation, but I expect she can go home tomorrow. However, I'm strongly recommending that she work with a therapist who specializes in trauma and anxiety management. And—" Dr. Martinez paused meaningfully. "I'm recommending a significant reduction in work stress." After Dr. Martinez left the room, fell into a contemplative silence. Daniel could see Evelyn wrestling with emotions she wasn't accustomed to facing, with the reality that her invulnerability was an illusion she could no longer maintain. "I'm embarrassed," she finally admitted. "Collapsing in front of the board, being rushed to the hospital again, having everyone see me as weak." "Evelyn, there's nothing weak about having a panic attack. You've been through trauma, you're under enormous pressure, and you're trying to change not just your company, but entire communities. The fact that you care enough about that work to have a physiological response when it's threatened, that's not weakness. That's proof of how much you've grown. Have I grown, or have I just become more fragile?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "6 months ago, when I found you on that sidewalk, you told me there was no one who would miss you if you died. Do you remember that?" Evelyn nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Today, when James told me you'd collapsed, I felt like my world was collapsing too. Not because you're my boss, not because you've given me opportunities I never dreamed of, but because—" Daniel paused, realizing he was about to cross a line he couldn't uncross. Because I care about you. More than I've allowed myself to care about anyone since Sarah died. The silence that followed felt charged with possibility and danger. Evelyn stared at him, her expression cycling through surprise, hope, and fear. "Daniel, you know this complicates everything," she whispered. "I know. But lying here pretending we're just colleagues complicates everything too." Before either of them could say more, the door opened, and Lily bounded in, followed by a slightly harried-looking Patricia. "Ms. Evelyn." Lily rushed to the bedside, her backpack still slung over her shoulders. "Miss Patricia picked me up from school and told me you were sick again. Are you okay? Do you need me to draw you another picture of being alive?" Despite everything, Evelyn laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that filled the sterile room with warmth. "Oh, sweetheart, I would love another picture. But what are you doing here? This is a school day." "Daddy called the school and said it was a family emergency," Lily said matter-of-factly, climbing into the chair Daniel vacated for her. "And you're family now, right? That's what families do when someone is in the hospital." Daniel felt his throat tighten. Somewhere along the way, without him realizing it, Lily had incorporated Evelyn into their small circle of two, and looking at Evelyn's face as she processed what Lily had said, he could see that the feeling was mutual. "Yes," Evelyn said softly, reaching out to smooth Lily's hair. "I suppose we are family now." "Good, because I brought you something." Lily dug into her backpack and produced a hand-drawn card. "I made this during art class. See, it's you and me and Daddy, and we're all holding hands, and there are hearts everywhere because that's what families have, lots of love in their hearts." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she studied the drawing. It showed 3 stick figures, a tall one labeled Daddy Daniel, a medium one labeled Evelyn, and a small one labeled Lily, standing together under a rainbow surrounded by dozens of colorful hearts. "Lily, this is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. "Really more beautiful than all your fancy business stuff. Much more beautiful. Because this shows me something I never thought I'd have, a real family." Patricia cleared her throat softly from the doorway. "I hate to interrupt, but Ms. Grant, there are several board members in the waiting room asking about your condition, and there are reporters in the lobby." Evelyn's expression immediately hardened, the corporate mask sliding back into place. "Tell the board members I'll be fine and back in the office tomorrow. Tell the reporters—" "No," Daniel interrupted firmly. "You're not going back to the office tomorrow. Dr. Martinez said you need to reduce your stress, and facing a hostile board meeting the day after a panic attack is the opposite of stress reduction." "Daniel, I can't just disappear. The board is already questioning my fitness to lead the company. If I don't show strength, then show wisdom instead," Daniel said. "Show them that you're smart enough to take care of yourself so you can lead more effectively. Show them that the company matters too much to you to risk your health for appearances." Lily looked back and forth between them, sensing the tension. "Are people being mean to you at work, Ms. Evelyn?" "Some people are questioning whether I'm making good decisions about how to spend the company's money," Evelyn explained gently. "Well, that's silly," Lily said, with the absolute certainty of childhood. "You spend money helping families like me and Daddy used to be. That's the best way to spend money. Those people are just being grumpy because they don't understand about being scared you can't pay rent." Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. Lily had distilled the entire corporate conflict into its essential truth. Evelyn was trying to use her company's resources to help people, and she was facing resistance from those who prioritized profit over purpose. You know what, sweetheart? You're absolutely right. Evelyn looked at Daniel with renewed determination. Patricia, please tell the board that I'll be taking the rest of the week off and that Daniel Carter will be representing my interests in any discussions about our community development programs. Patricia looked startled. Ms. Grant, are you sure that's wise? Mr. Carter isn't officially authorized to speak for you in board matters. Then make it official. Draw up the paperwork to give Daniel proxy authority for any decisions related to community development. If the board wants to challenge these programs, they'll have to go through someone who actually understands what we're trying to accomplish. Daniel felt a surge of both pride and terror. Evelyn, are you sure about this? I've only been in this world for 6 months. Which is exactly why you're the right person to defend it. You remember what it's like to need help, Daniel. You won't be swayed by profit margins and shareholder concerns. You'll fight for these programs because you know they matter. Over the next several hours, as evening settled over the city, an unusual gathering took shape in Evelyn's hospital room. Patricia worked on her laptop, drafting the legal documents that would give Daniel unprecedented authority within Grant Industries. Lily did homework at a small table, occasionally showing her math problems to Evelyn for approval. James Mitchell coordinated with hospital security to manage the media presence and concerned employees who wanted updates on their CEO's condition. And Daniel found himself in the strange position of preparing to defend multi-million-dollar development projects to a corporate board that would undoubtedly see him as an unqualified interloper. Are you nervous? Evelyn asked him during a quiet moment when Lily had fallen asleep in the chair beside her bed. Terrified, Daniel admitted. These people have MBAs and decades of experience. They're going to tear me apart. No, they're not, because you have something they don't have. You have moral authority. You're not defending these programs because they'll make you money or advance your career. You're defending them because they're right. What if that's not enough? Evelyn reached for his hand again, and this time the gesture felt different, more intimate, more significant. Then we'll have tried our best to do something meaningful with the power we've been given. And that's more than most people can say. Ms. Evelyn, Lily's sleepy voice interrupted them. Are you going to marry my daddy? Both adults froze, unprepared for the innocent directness of the question. Lily, Daniel started, but Evelyn spoke first. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because you hold hands like people who love each other, and you take care of each other when you're sick, and you worry about each other when you're apart. That's what people do when they love each other. And what would you think about that? Evelyn asked carefully. If your daddy and I loved each other that way. Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. I think it would be really nice, because then I'd have a daddy and a mommy again, and you'd have a family like you always wanted, and we could all take care of each other forever. The simplicity of her answer hung in the air between them. In Lily's 8-year-old mind, love was straightforward. People who cared for each other should be together, should form families, should promise to take care of each other forever. Lily, Daniel said gently, sometimes grown-up relationships are more complicated than that. Why? She asked with genuine curiosity. If you love someone and they love you back, and you make each other happy, and you want to take care of each other, what's complicated about that? Evelyn laughed softly. You know what, Lily? You're absolutely right. Sometimes adults make things much more complicated than they need to be. As visiting hours ended, and Patricia gathered her work materials as James coordinated tomorrow's security arrangements. As Lily reluctantly accepted that she needed to go home and get ready for school the next day, Daniel found himself alone with Evelyn again. She's right, you know, Evelyn said quietly. About us. About how we feel. I know, Daniel replied. But she's also 8 years old. She doesn't understand about class differences, about power dynamics, about the fact that if this doesn't work out, I could lose everything. My job, my financial security, my ability to provide for her. And what if it does work out? What if we stop being afraid of taking risks and start being brave enough to trust what we feel? Daniel looked at her lying in the hospital bed, vulnerable but determined, brilliant but human, powerful, but somehow still that frightened woman he'd held on a rainy sidewalk 6 months ago. Then I guess we find out what happens when two people from completely different worlds decide that love matters more than safety, he said. Evelyn smiled, and for the first time since he'd known her, it was a smile completely free of guardedness or calculation. I like our chances. As Daniel prepared to leave, Evelyn caught his hand one more time. Daniel, tomorrow, when you face that board meeting, remember something. You're not just fighting for community development programs. You're fighting for the possibility that people can change, that companies can have consciences, that love can bridge any gap. You're fighting for us. Walking out of the hospital into the cool night air, Daniel felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would walk into a boardroom full of powerful people who would question not just his qualifications, but his right to be there. He would have to defend programs worth millions of dollars, decisions that would affect thousands of families, and a vision of corporate responsibility that challenged everything these people believed about business. But tonight, as he held Lily's sleeping form in the back of a taxi, taking them home to their new apartment in their new life, Daniel realized that for the first time since Sarah's death, he wasn't facing the future alone. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever challenges lay ahead, he had Evelyn and she had him. They had Lily and she had them. They were family now in all the ways that mattered. And sometimes, as Lily had pointed out with the wisdom of childhood, love really was that simple. The Grant Industries boardroom had never felt more intimidating than it did at 9 o'clock the next morning. Daniel stood outside the mahogany doors, adjusting his tie for the third time and trying to calm his racing heart. Through the glass panels, he could see 12 of the most powerful business leaders in New York already seated around the massive conference table, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. Patricia Chen appeared at his elbow, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the determined expression of someone preparing for battle. The proxy documents are all filed correctly. You have full authority to speak for Ms. Grant on all community development matters. Are you ready? No, Daniel said honestly. But I'm going in anyway. Good. Remember, these people respect strength and conviction. Don't apologize for being there, don't defer to their experience, and don't let them intimidate you into backing down from what you know is right. Daniel took a deep breath and pushed open the doors. The conversation around the table stopped immediately as all eyes turned to him. He recognized several faces from business magazines and news programs, titans of industry who controlled billions of dollars and thousands of jobs. Gentlemen, ladies, Daniel said, taking his seat at the place marked with Evelyn's nameplate. I'm Daniel Carter, and I'm here representing Ms. Grant's interests in our community development initiatives. Mr. Carter, the voice belonged to Richard Westbrook, the silver-haired chairman of the board, whose family had been investors in Grant Industries for 3 generations. While we appreciate Ms. Grant's confidence in you, this board needs to address some serious concerns about the direction of this company. These community development projects are hemorrhaging money with no clear return on investment. I'd like to respectfully disagree with that assessment, Daniel replied, opening his portfolio. But before we discuss numbers, I think we need to clarify what we mean by return on investment. Profit, Mr. Carter, said Margaret Chen, the chief financial officer. We mean profit. Grant Industries has shareholders who expect their investments to generate income, not fund social welfare programs. And what profit margin did Grant Industries see from the East Harlem project? Daniel asked, pulling out his prepared documentation. Because according to the numbers I've reviewed, that project has generated a 37% increase in property values in the surrounding area, created 400 permanent jobs, reduced crime by 62%, and brought 3 new businesses to the neighborhood. The tax revenue alone has more than offset our initial investment. A murmur went around the table. Several board members leaned forward to examine the documents Daniel was distributing. Those are interesting statistics, admitted Thomas Rodriguez, the head of urban planning. But they don't address the timeline for profitability. These projects tie up capital for years before showing any return. And what's the timeline for profitability on building another luxury high-rise that sits half-empty because the only people who can afford it already have 3 other places to live? Daniel countered. What's the return on investment for creating more housing that doesn't house anyone who actually needs housing? The room fell silent. Daniel could see he'd struck a nerve. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Mr. Carter, Westbrook's voice was colder now. You seem to be suggesting that this company should prioritize social impact over financial responsibility to our shareholders. I'm suggesting that in 2025, the two aren't mutually exclusive anymore. The companies that thrive in the next decade will be the ones that understand that sustainable profit comes from sustainable communities. Daniel stood up, moving to the presentation screen at the front of the room. May I show you something? Without waiting for permission, he connected his laptop and pulled up a presentation he'd been working on since 3 in the morning. The first slide showed a map of Manhattan with color-coded neighborhoods. This is New York City divided by median income, Daniel explained. The red areas represent the highest income neighborhoods. The blue areas represent the lowest. Now watch what happens when I overlay this with crime statistics. The map shifted, showing clear correlations between poverty and crime rates. Now watch this. Another overlay appeared. These green dots represent Grant Industries properties and developments over the past 20 years. Notice anything? The pattern was stark. Almost all of Grant Industries' developments were clustered in the red high-income areas with virtually nothing in the blue zones. For 20 years, this company has been building wealth for people who already have wealth in neighborhoods that already have resources. We've been ignoring 70% of this city's population. Daniel clicked to the next slide. But look what happens when we invest in underserved communities. The new map showed the East Harlem project with dramatically improved statistics in employment, education, healthcare access, and small business development, radiating out from the development site. This isn't charity. Daniel continued, his voice gaining strength as he saw several board members leaning forward with interest. This is smart business. We're creating new markets, developing customer bases that have been ignored by other companies, and building brand loyalty in communities that will remember who helped them when they needed it most. That's a very compelling presentation, said Dr. Sarah Kim, the board's newest member and a former urban policy expert. But can you show us concrete financial projections? I can do better than that. Daniel clicked to his final slides. I can show you what happens when a company commits to this model long-term. Patagonia saw a 40% increase in revenue when they committed to environmental sustainability. Ben & Jerry's built a billion-dollar brand on social responsibility. Costco's employee-first policies have made them one of the most profitable retailers in America. He paused, looking around the room at faces that were no longer hostile, but genuinely curious. Grant Industries has the opportunity to be the first major development company to prove that you can do well by doing good. But it requires believing that profit and purpose aren't enemies, they're partners. Mr. Carter, Westbrook said slowly, these are impressive arguments, but you're asking us to make decisions based on idealism rather than proven business models. No, sir, I'm asking you to make decisions based on the proven business model of the future. Companies that don't adapt to changing social expectations don't survive. Look at Blockbuster. Look at Kodak. Look at any company that insisted the old ways were the only ways. The room erupted in conversation as board members began debating among themselves. Daniel could hear fragments of arguments on both sides, some expressing concern about shareholder expectations, others acknowledging the validity of his points about market evolution. Mr. Carter, Margaret Chen called for attention. Assuming we were to continue funding these community development projects, what guarantee do we have that they'll succeed? What's your contingency plan if these investments don't pay off? This was the question Daniel had been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. Miss Chen, what guarantee did this company have when it built its first luxury high-rise? What contingency plan did we have when we expanded into commercial real estate? Every business decision involves risk. The question isn't whether these projects might fail, it's whether we're willing to accept the certainty of stagnation that comes from never trying anything new. But you're not just asking us to try something new, Rodriguez pointed out. You're asking us to fundamentally change what this company is. Yes, I am, Daniel said without hesitation. Because the company Grant Industries has been isn't the company it needs to be to survive and thrive in the next 20 years. And more importantly, it isn't the company Evelyn Grant wants it to be. Ms. Grant has had 2 cardiac events in 6 months, Westbrook said bluntly. That raises questions about her judgment and her ability to lead this company through such a dramatic transformation. Daniel felt anger flare in his chest, but he forced himself to respond calmly. Mr. Westbrook, Ms. Grant's cardiac events were caused by working herself to the point of exhaustion, trying to build something meaningful with this company. She collapsed yesterday defending these programs because she believes in them so deeply that threats to their existence caused her body to go into crisis. If that's not the kind of passionate leadership you want running this company, then maybe you should ask yourselves what kind of leadership you do want. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel could see he'd crossed a line challenged not just their business philosophy, but their right to question Evelyn's fitness to lead. Mr. Carter, Dr. Kim spoke carefully, you seem to have a very personal investment in defending Ms. Grant. I do, Daniel said, deciding that complete honesty was his only remaining option. 6 months ago, Evelyn Grant was a stranger who collapsed on a sidewalk, and I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Today, she's someone I care about deeply. Someone whose vision for this company has given my life purpose and meaning. She's also someone who's given me and my daughter opportunities we never could have imagined. He paused, looking around the room at faces that were watching him with intense curiosity. But more than any of that, she's someone who's brave enough to risk everything she's built to try to make the world a little bit better. And if this board can't see the value in that kind of leadership, then maybe Grant Industries doesn't deserve her. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Richard Westbrook cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, this board will need time to deliberate on these proposals. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning to vote on whether to continue funding the community development initiatives. And Miss Grant's leadership, Daniel asked, will also be subject to discussion, Westbrook replied diplomatically. As the board members filed out, several stopped to shake Daniel's hand or ask follow-up questions about specific projects. Dr. Kim lingered longer than the others. Mr. Carter, that was quite a performance. You should know that you've given this board a lot to think about. I hope so, Dr. Kim. These communities deserve someone to fight for them. Indeed they do. And Ms. Grant is fortunate to have someone fighting for her as well. Daniel left the Grant Industries building feeling emotionally drained, but oddly hopeful. He'd said everything he'd wanted to say, defended everything he believed in, and put his heart on the line in front of 12 of the most powerful people in New York. Whatever happened next was out of his hands. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "How did it go, Mumkums?" Instead of texting back, he called her. "I think I may have just ended both of our careers," he said without preamble. "That bad, that honest. I told them that if they couldn't appreciate your leadership, maybe Grant Industries didn't deserve you." Evelyn's laugh was delighted. "Oh, Daniel, you magnificent, brave, impossible man. What did they say? They're voting tomorrow, on the community development programs and on your leadership. And how do you feel about that?" Daniel considered the question as he walked through the busy Manhattan streets, watching the flow of people, construction workers, and executives, families, and individuals all trying to build lives in a city that could be both wonderfully inclusive and brutally exclusive. "I feel like we told the truth, and whatever happens next, at least we didn't compromise what we believe in." "Come to the hospital," Evelyn said softly. "I need to see you." When Daniel arrived at Mount Sinai an hour later, he found Evelyn sitting in a chair by the window, dressed in street clothes and looking more vibrant than she had in weeks. "They're releasing me this afternoon," she said as he entered. "Clean bill of health with strict instructions to reduce my stress levels and work with a therapist on anxiety management." "That's wonderful news." Daniel sat down across from her, noting how the afternoon sunlight caught the gold highlights in her dark hair. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Scared," Evelyn admitted. "Not about my health, but about what happens next. If the board votes to discontinue the community development programs, if they decide I'm not fit to lead the company anymore, then we'll figure out what comes next together," Daniel said firmly. "Evelyn, I meant what I said in that boardroom. Whatever happens with Grant Industries, you've already proven that it's possible to use business as a force for good. That vision doesn't die just because one company can't see its value. And us. What happens to us if I'm no longer your boss?" Daniel reached for her hands, noting how natural the gesture had become. "Then we find out what happens when two people who care about each other don't have to worry about professional complications anymore. Is that what we are, the two people who care about each other?" "Evelyn, I think we stopped being just colleagues who care about each other somewhere around the time you asked me to bring Lily to meet you. And we definitely stopped being just friends when you told that doctor I was family. And when did we become—" She trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish the question. "When did we fall in love?" Daniel supplied gently. "I think that happened gradually and then all at once. For me, it was watching you with Lily, seeing how your face lit up when she hugged you. It was realizing that underneath all your success and power, you were just someone who wanted to be loved for who you are, not what you own." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "For me, it was the moment you told me I wasn't alone on that sidewalk. Everything that's happened since then has just been me trying to be worthy of that kindness." "You don't have to be worthy of love, Evelyn. Love isn't something you earn or deserve. It's something you accept and give freely." "I don't know how to do that. I've spent so many years building walls, protecting myself, believing that vulnerability was weakness." "Then we'll learn together. We'll teach each other how to be open, how to trust, how to build something real." Before either of them could say more, the door burst open and Lily rushed in, followed by Patricia. "Ms. Evelyn, Miss Patricia picked me up from school again and said you get to come home today." Lily threw her arms around Evelyn in her characteristic enthusiastic hug. "Are you all better now?" "Much better, sweetheart. And guess what? I think it's time for a celebration." "What kind of celebration?" Evelyn looked at Daniel over Lily's head, her expression both nervous and determined. "The kind where we tell you something very important about how much your daddy and I care about each other." Lily pulled back her eyes wide with excitement. "Are you going to get married?" "Well," Evelyn said carefully, "that's something grown-ups have to talk about first. But we wanted you to know that we love each other very much, and that means our family is going to keep growing and changing in wonderful ways." "I knew it," Lily bounced excitedly. "I could tell by the way you look at each other and how you hold hands and how Daddy smiles different when he talks about you." "How does Daddy smile different?" Evelyn asked, amused. "Like he's happy all the way down to his toes instead of just happy on the outside," Lily explained with the precision of someone who had studied the adults in her life very carefully. Daniel felt his heart swell with love for both of them. This brilliant, complicated woman who had somehow found room in her carefully ordered life for a construction worker and his daughter, and this wise, wonderful child who had accepted Evelyn into their family with the openness that only children possess. "Lily," Daniel said, "how would you feel if Ms. Evelyn became a permanent part of our family?" "You mean like adoption, where we all promise to take care of each other forever and ever?" "Something like that, yes." Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Would she come to my school plays and help me with homework and teach me about business things?" "If you wanted me to," Evelyn said softly. "And would you and Daddy get married and have a big party where I get to wear a fancy dress?" "If that's what we all decide we want," Daniel replied. "And would we live together in a house with enough rooms for everyone, and maybe get that dog we talked about?" "Very possibly." Evelyn laughed. "Then yes, I think that would be the best family ever," Lily declared. "Can we start right now?" The next morning brought news that would change everything. Daniel arrived at Grant Industries to find Patricia waiting for him with an expression that was equal parts relief and amazement. "The board voted," she said without preamble, "unanimous approval to continue funding the community development initiatives for the next 5 years with an increased budget allocation, and they passed a resolution of confidence in Ms. Grant's leadership." Daniel felt his knees go weak with relief. How is that possible? Yesterday, they seemed ready to shut everything down. According to Dr. Kim, your presentation sparked a 6-hour debate that went well into the evening. Apparently, several board members did their own research after you left and discovered that everything you said about market trends and social responsibility was backed up by extensive data. Mr. Westbrook himself called it the most compelling business case for corporate social responsibility he'd ever heard. And Evelyn's leadership, Mr. Westbrook said, and I quote, "Anyone passionate enough about their work to have a panic attack defending it clearly has the kind of dedication this company needs." Daniel laughed, remembering his challenge to the board about what kind of leadership they wanted. "Where is she now?" "Conference room B. She's been waiting for you." Daniel found Evelyn standing at the window of the conference room, looking out at the city spread below. When she heard him enter, she turned with a smile that was radiant with joy and relief. "We did it," she said simply. "You did it. You built something worth fighting for." "We built something worth fighting for," Evelyn corrected. "Daniel, these programs, this company, this vision for what business can be, none of it means anything without someone to share it with." "Are you asking me to be your business partner?" "I'm asking you to be my partner in everything," Evelyn said, moving closer to him. Business life raising Lily, building a future where love and work and family all support each other instead of competing. That sounds like a proposal. It is a proposal. Not the traditional kind with rings and bent knees, but a proposal that we stop being afraid of what we feel and start building something beautiful together. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box that he'd been carrying since the previous evening. Actually, I was hoping to make the traditional kind too. Evelyn's eyes widened as he dropped to one knee in the conference room, where they'd spent so many hours planning projects and dreaming about changing the world. Evelyn Grant, 6 months ago, you were a stranger who needed help. Today, you're the woman I love, the partner who shares my dreams, the person who's taught me that it's possible to build a life that matters. Will you marry me? Yes, Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes to all of it. To marriage and partnership, and building something beautiful together. As Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, Evelyn laughed through her tears. You know, when I woke up in that hospital room after my first heart attack, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd wasted decades building something that didn't matter. And now I think my life was just beginning. Everything that came before was just preparation for this, for us, for the work we're going to do together, for the family we're going to build. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning in Central Park, Daniel Carter and Evelyn Grant were married in a ceremony that perfectly reflected their unlikely journey together. Lily served as maid of honor, wearing the fancy dress she'd dreamed about, and carrying a bouquet of flowers she'd helped design. The guest list included construction workers and board members, community leaders and corporate executives, a mix of people from both their worlds, coming together to celebrate love that had bridged every gap. James Mitchell walked Evelyn down the aisle, having become the closest thing to a father figure she'd known since her own father's death. Patricia Chen officiated the ceremony, having become ordained online specifically for the occasion. The vows they exchanged were written together, promises to support each other's dreams, to remember that love was both shelter and adventure, to build a family that honored both where they'd come from and where they were going. I promise, Daniel said, looking into Evelyn's eyes as the autumn sun filtered through the trees above them. To remind you every day that you're not alone, that love is not something you have to earn, and that the best kind of strength comes from the courage to be vulnerable. I promise, Evelyn replied, her voice steady and sure, to use everything I have, my resources, my influence, my privilege to build the kind of world where every family has the opportunities you've given me, where every child has the security Lily deserves, and where love always wins over fear. I promise, Lily added spontaneously, causing laughter to ripple through the assembled guests, to be the best daughter to both of you and to help you remember that families are made of love, not rules. The reception was held at Grant Industries in the same conference room where Daniel had defended their community development programs and where Evelyn had accepted his proposal. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. This was where their professional partnership had become personal, where their shared vision for business had become a shared vision for life. You know, Evelyn said, as they danced to their first song as husband and wife, I keep thinking about that night on Fifth Avenue. If you hadn't stopped to help a stranger, we would have found each other some other way, Daniel said with certainty. Love like this doesn't happen by accident. It happens because two people are ready to see each other, really see each other, and decide that what they find is worth fighting for. Even when one person is a billionaire CEO and the other is a construction worker. Especially then. We're proof that love doesn't care about bank accounts or job titles. Love cares about character and kindness and the courage to keep your heart open even when the world tells you it's safer to keep it closed. And 3 years later, the Carter Grant family had grown in ways none of them had anticipated. Lily, now 11 and wise beyond her years, had indeed gotten the dog she'd dreamed about, a rescue golden retriever named Hope, who served as therapy dog for the children in their community programs. Their home in Brooklyn, a restored brownstone with enough space for everyone to have their own room, plus several extra for guests, had become a gathering place for an extended family that included Patricia James, Mrs. Chen, from their old building, and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by their work. The community development programs had expanded beyond anyone's expectations, creating jobs for thousands of families and transforming entire neighborhoods. Daniel had been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as the businessman who's changing how America thinks about profit, while Evelyn had been invited to speak at the United Nations about the role of private enterprise in addressing global poverty. But the measure of their success wasn't found in magazine covers or speaking engagements. It was found in moments like the one unfolding on a Tuesday evening, as they sat around their kitchen table, Daniel helping Lily with a school project about urban planning, Evelyn reviewing proposals for their latest initiative, Hope sleeping contentedly at their feet. "Daddy," Lily said, looking up from her poster board, covered with drawings of community gardens and affordable housing. "Do you think we've made the world better?" Daniel looked around the table at his wife and daughter, at the life they'd built together, at the countless families whose lives had been changed by their work. "I think we've made our corner of the world better, Princess. And maybe that's how the whole world gets better, one family at a time, one community at a time, one act of love at a time. Like when you helped Ms. Evelyn on the sidewalk. Exactly like that. One stranger deciding that another stranger's life matters and choosing to do something about it." Evelyn reached across the table to take Daniel's hand, the same gesture that had connected them in a hospital room, in a boardroom, at an altar, and in countless quiet moments since. "You know what I'm grateful for today?" she asked, echoing the daily practice that Lily had taught them both. "What's that?" "I'm grateful that love is braver than fear, that kindness is stronger than indifference, and that sometimes when you save someone else's life, you end up saving your own." "I'm grateful for second chances," Daniel added, "and for discovering that the best kind of success isn't about how much you accumulate, but about how much you give away." "I'm grateful for families that choose each other," Lily contributed, "and for grown-ups who remember that the most important things can't be bought with money, they can only be built with love." Outside their window, the city hummed with its endless energy, millions of people living separate lives that occasionally intersected in moments of connection, kindness, and hope. And in their warm kitchen, 3 people who had found each other against all odds continued the daily work of building something beautiful together. A family, a business, a legacy of love that would ripple outward in ways they might never fully know. It had started with a stranger collapsing on a rainy sidewalk and a man who chose to help. It had grown into a love story that proved the most profound transformations begin not with grand gestures, but with simple acts of human decency. And it continued each day as Daniel, Evelyn, and Lily woke up and chose again to believe that love was worth the risk, that hope was stronger than fear, and that the courage to open your heart to another person was the bravest thing anyone could do. In the end, that was the real measure of their success, not the buildings they'd constructed or the programs they'd funded, but the fact that they'd created a family built on the radical idea that every person deserves to be seen, valued, and loved exactly as they are. And in a world that often felt divided by difference, they'd proven that love really could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and transform any life brave enough to embrace it. The billionaire and the construction worker, the CEO and the single father, the woman who had everything and the man who had almost nothing, they'd become simply Daniel and Evelyn and Lily, A family whose love story began with a heart attack on Fifth Avenue and would continue as long as there were hearts brave enough to beat for something bigger than themselves.